These files were never meant to be public, but someone reopened them. This is the Dark Bureau. Every day, cargo containers worth billions converge at the great maritime gateways of Europe, the sprawling arms of Rotterdam, the labyrinthine docks of Antwerp, the meticulously ordered platforms of Singapore. Rows of coloured boxes and the relentless tide of cranes suggest order, efficiency and trust. Paperwork is stamped with authority, shipments are logged and scanned, and the routines of global trade appear seamless, each number matching a manifest, each barcode verified. But beneath this orchestrated normalcy, a subterranean world moves with equal precision. Somewhere along the lines of code and paper, containers vanish from the grid, replaced by phantom manifests as authentic seeming as any. Dangerous goods, masked behind seemingly perfect records, slip unchallenged through the gates, their contents invisible to even the most diligent customs teams. The port authorities repeat their assurances. Everything is counted, they say. Yet behind the confidence stirs a question that casts a long shadow. Who in reality is doing the counting? To the average observer, a port is simply the terminus of a journey, a waypoint for commerce, a symbol of connectivity and modernity. For organised criminal networks, however, these colossal intersections are more than endpoints or beginnings. They are opportunities sculpted by bureaucracy and borders defined by human decisions and digital vulnerabilities. Over weeks and months, syndicates embed themselves into the arteries of commerce. They infiltrate shipping brokers and haulage firms, targeting customs officials one by one. They study the procedures designed to protect, not to defeat them, and they reshape the systems from within. In 2022 alone, Europol and its partners flagged more than 1,300 suspicious cargoes threaded into legitimate trade. Counterfeit pharmaceuticals meant for desperate consumers. Crates of endangered orchid species smuggled with forged CITES certificates. Rare hardwood disguised as building materials. All of it masked behind documents put together by experts who understand every nuance of the inspection routine. Beneath the clatter and bustle, an invisible parallel supply chain runs as efficiently as the legal one. Major world ports, Rotterdam, Antwerp, Casablanca, Singapore, become central nodes in shadow networks. Illicit gold, synthetic opioids, fake electronics bound for markets in Africa and the Middle East, even art objects meant for laundering money, all flow through these choke points. Smugglers expertly select their routes, exploiting gaps in oversight and capitalising on regulatory leniencies in transshipment hubs. The deeper the integration, the further rules bend, and mutual trust frays. Sometimes a shipment labelled as fertiliser, bleached into anonymity by false manifests, turns out, once unloaded and unpacked, to be crates of small arms intended for a militia across the sea. On the surface, port security seems a game of physical fortifications and visible deterrents. Barriers, patrols, ID badges, inspection scanners, a fortress of process and apparatus. Yet the rules are rewritten in more subtle ways. Envelopes of cash change hands in back offices. Waybills and bills of lading are forged or quietly doctored by someone with sufficient security access. Tracking numbers in secure databases are quietly altered after hours. One customs officer, with a price or a personal pressure point, can unlock millions in illicit profit for their sponsors. When the tempo of smuggling intensifies, port management may find themselves swapping entire shifts, hoping to intercept a leak, while criminals counter by embedding insiders on the replacement teams. Software sometimes logs containers as cleared before they're even offloaded, a clerical mirage designed to blend into the workflow. If the digital and paper trail is perfect, only the truly suspicious ever prompt a second look. Why do customs officers, professionals with careers at stake, risk years or decades in prison? The simple answer, greed, tells only part of the story. Syndicates rely as much on psychological profiling and coercion as on piles of cash. In some regions, such as Southeast Asia, Entire clerical cadres have been compromised after sustained pressure campaigns, exploiting family debts, ignored pay raises and office disputes. Threats are made with careful restraint or chilling specificity. If one customs official stands firm, another is approached, quietly observed, and eventually cracked. With every refusal, the net just grows wider, its persistence relentless. Ports in one country enhance systems so syndicates shift west or east or circle back with a new front company. The fight becomes a war of attrition, pitting institutional patience against organised improvisation. As the scale and ingenuity of this infiltration grow, so does the pressure, not just on individuals, but on the very structures meant to detect such threats. Early in 2021, an anti-smuggling task force studying European shipping records detects vague, unsettling patterns. The same serial numbers appear in shipments from unrelated exporters. Small, seemingly sleepy ports log container traffic far exceeding their physical capacity. At odd hours, containers get processed and cleared with no inspection log or camera data to support it. A pattern emerges. The frequent circumvention of normal procedures points to systematic manipulation. Law enforcement agencies, recognising the limits of national jurisdiction, band together. International task forces initiate shadow audits, tap phones, and deep dive into millions of lines of digital shipping logs. Each thread they pull, each bounce of data between ports and middlemen leads to ever larger, more distributed networks. The complexity is daunting. Invoices for shipments that should be impossible, front companies based in Dubai, instructions spinning through encrypted messaging platforms, and servers registered in countries that refuse extradition requests. Syndicates adapt on the fly. In southern Spain, as enforcement brings in new scanners and policing, traffic shifts via a data command to Casablanca, where oversight is weaker and bureaucratic procedures more opaque. Within days, illicit cargo is rerouted again, this time emerging out of ports in the Black Sea. Trade-based money laundering techniques multiply. A cheap resin statue is declared as a priceless work of art. Paperwork for millions in medical supplies is used to mask shipments of cigarettes and narcotics. In Tunisia, a single database administrator erases the records of a container in exchange not for cash, but for the promise of overseas schooling for his children. These are not lumbering mafias, but agile, well-capitalised syndicates that routinely change their personnel, their shell companies, and even their methods, pivoting in response to the smallest fluctuations in enforcement and technology. Then comes the leak that no system can ignore. In Antwerp, a digital forensics unit uncovers a hidden spreadsheet, shielded by multiple layers of encryption. This ledger is a revelation, a systematic accounting of bribe amounts assigned to named customs officials, a timetable of protected containers, and notes on which inspectors could be trusted to look away. As soon as authorities intervene, the syndicate routes shift again, this time ramping up operations through North Africa, leaving investigators grappling with ghosts. The revelations spark more than just new investigations. Suddenly, a port once cited for its efficiency faces questions before parliamentary committees. Lawmakers and prosecutors summon industry executives for public hearings as evidence piles up. Shipping companies lose their licenses or contracts overnight. Insurance companies, spooked by the scope of risk, double rates for legitimate trade, threatening to squeeze small businesses out of the market entirely. The institutional response is swift and severe. Customs agencies throughout the EU conduct hasty internal reviews, revisit hiring and oversight policies, and suspend or reassign dozens of senior officials, some of whom face immediate indictment. The consequences run deeper than headlines and budgets. With each shipment of illegally logged timber or container of ivory tusks that slips through, valuable species are erased from entire ecosystems. Small exporters, unable to match syndicate-enabled competition, collapse or retreat. Widespread distrust in port systems pushes up consumer prices, hinders trade growth, and generates hidden economic harms. Ordinary citizens face higher costs, both at the store and in terms of broader national security. The institutional fixes, investment in advanced scanning, rapid response forensic teams, exchange of cross-border intelligence, help, but come at enormous public cost. As customs agencies react and adapt, criminal networks escalate in turn, drawing on cyber specialists and data scientists to find new seams in the system. Enforcement agencies, sometimes lacking the resources or mandate for international action, can do little but plug leaks as they appear. Facing this escalating threat, law enforcement agencies equip themselves with next-generation tools. Artificial intelligence platforms analyse vessel movement, flag anomalies in trade flows, and generate risk profiles for high-priority shipments. Satellite surveillance systems track the global movement of containers, building data sets where every deviation can trigger a new investigation. Still, as enforcement grows more sophisticated, so do their adversaries. Where once cash bribes sufficed to oil the machinery, now digital penetration is the weapon of choice. Syndicates employ elite hackers to manipulate customs clearance systems, erasing or fabricating records, and subverting approval processes in real time. In a celebrated case, a server in Singapore runs custom malware, silently inserting the codes needed to greenlight hundreds of illicit shipments, each lost inside the tide of legitimate trade. Within a year, copies of the same exploit surface in Casablanca, then Baku, then Durban, each adapted for the nuances of a different customs regime. Institutional response varies. Some ports invest heavily in cybersecurity, others fall further behind, creating new weak spots for exploitation. Structural analysis reveals a central paradox. Ports designed to facilitate international trade often become hotspots precisely because of their scale, complexity, and competing priorities. The increasing automation and digitization meant to enhance security also accelerates the game of infiltration. A single server breach in one automated port control room can ripple through interconnected customs databases around the globe, enabling a cascade of unauthorized approvals that may not be noticed for weeks. Meanwhile, protocols for international coordination are hampered by sovereignty concerns and differences in enforcement philosophies. Layers of subcontracted logistics, opaque corporate structures, and regulatory silos create opportunities for criminal brokers to operate with near impunity. Legal victories, when they come, are often partial and unsatisfying. Arrested officials sometimes claim ignorance, blaming system gaps or blaming other layers of management. Dismantled syndicates reassemble with new names, new personnel, and smarter, more hardened methodologies. Port operators roll out new AI-driven surveillance, only to see criminals test and adapt to these models with unsettling speed. The evidence of crime, empty containers, erased logs, ghost shipments, remains, scars at the heart of the global trade network. Financial losses mount alongside a more corrosive damage, the collapse of shared trust necessary for commerce to thrive. Customs institutions, battered by public exposure and depleted budgets, struggle to retain staff and rebuild credibility with industry partners and the public at large. Regulatory bodies push for standardised customs procedures, but implementation lags behind criminal innovation. Over time, resilience becomes a test not just of security, but of institutional learning. Automation improves efficiency, but also creates new vulnerabilities, air gaps in security protocols, vulnerabilities in proprietary software, blind spots in satellite monitoring. Criminal organisations invest in counterintelligence, embedding technical personnel to anticipate or disrupt law enforcement operations. When one jurisdiction closes its digital loopholes, another opens halfway around the world. State governments and major shipping companies launch coordinated task forces, yet the networks remain one step ahead, never truly dissolved. For every seized container or disgraced official, dozens more slip through unnoticed, the proceeds flowing through complex webs of shell firms and offshore accounts. Market share quietly tilts away from legitimate actors, and public confidence sags under the weight of repeated exposure of systematic failure. The result is a global supply chain at constant risk, a system in which the legitimacy of trade depends on the invisible wars waged inside port corridors and code. Law enforcement, regulatory agencies, customs officials, and corporate compliance teams fight to keep pace with adversaries whose adaptability is matched only by their audacity. In the aftermath of every investigation, ghostly traces remain, evidence lost, containers forever unaccounted for, decisions made in haste and regret. These are reminders that the struggle is less a story of final victory than an endless cycle of adaptation. And finally, we are left with an uneasy question, one that echoes across the silent, digitized expanse of every container yard. As syndicates grow ever more agile and technology multiplies the ways containers can slip from sight, just how much of world trade will remain above water? How much will fade beneath the surface, reworked by criminal networks that have colonized the lifelines of commerce themselves? When the containers move in silence and the systems of accountability themselves become battlegrounds, can anyone, regulator, law enforcement, or ordinary citizen, still be sure what truly lies inside?